Before Egypt had pyramids, before Stonehenge was built, before the first dynasty of China, one civilization laid the foundation for the world as we know it. In a sun-scorched land between two rivers, the story of humanity's first great leap forward began. This is the story of Sumer. Our journey starts in southern Mesopotamia, a region we now call southern Iraq. The Greeks named it the land between the rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. But unlike the gentle, predictable flooding of Egypt's Nile, these rivers were violent and erratic. Catastrophic floods could wipe out an entire season's work in an instant, while scorching droughts could follow. To survive, the Sumerians had to become masters of their environment. They engineered the world's first large-scale irrigation systems, digging miles of canals to divert river water to their fields, building levees to hold back the floods, and creating vast reservoirs to store water for the dry seasons. They even pioneered waterproofing, using natural bitumen to seal their structures. But this very ingenuity had a hidden cost. The constant irrigation brought mineral salts to the surface of the soil. Over centuries, this salinization slowly poisoned the land, making it less and less fertile, an environmental crisis that would haunt them for generations. Despite these challenges, their agricultural success fueled a revolution. For the first time in history, people gathered in numbers large enough to form not just villages, but cities. We're talking about places like Eridu, Ur, and the legendary Uruk. A Sumerian city wasn't just about population. It was a complex organism defined by economic specialization, where potters, weavers, and metalworkers plied their trades. It was defined by monumental architecture that reached for the heavens, and by a new social structure, a ruling class of priests and kings. Uruk, around 3000 BCE, was likely the largest city on Earth, with tens of thousands of inhabitants. Its cultural influence was so immense that historians call this era the Uruk period. At the heart of each city stood a massive stepped pyramid called a ziggurat. The Great Ziggurat of Ur is a stunning example. It wasn't just a temple. It was the religious, administrative, and economic center of the city, a skyscraper of faith and power, connecting the earth to the heavens. To protect their wealth and people, these cities were fortified with massive walls. The walls of Uruk, said to be built by the legendary king Gilgamesh, stretched for nearly 6 miles. So how was this new urban society organized? At the top was the king, the Lugal, or big man, who acted as the earthly representative of the city's patron god, or goddess. Below him, a strict hierarchy emerged. High priests and priestesses managed the temples and the vast lands they owned. Scribes, the educated elite who held the keys to knowledge, ran the bureaucracy. Then came merchants organizing vast trade networks and skilled artisans creating goods for local use and export. The vast majority of the population were farmers, the backbone of the economy. At the very bottom were enslaved people, typically captives of war or those who had fallen into debt. It was a rigid system, but one that also produced the first known written laws. Long before the famous Code of Hammurabi, the Code of Ur-Nammu laid down rules for contracts, marriage, and punishments, showing a sophisticated attempt to create order and justice. The Sumerians were relentless innovators. Their burst of creativity changed the course of human technology forever. Around 3500 BCE, they transformed the potter's wheel into a tool for transportation, giving us the first wheeled vehicles, which revolutionized warfare and trade. They looked to the rivers and the sea and invented the sailboat, harnessing the wind to move goods and people more efficiently than ever before. In mathematics, they developed a sexagesimal or base 60 system. Why does a minute have 60 seconds and an hour 60 minutes? Why is a circle 360 degrees? We have the Sumerians to thank for that. They understood place value and used geometry to measure land for farming and construction. Their mathematical mind extended to the stars. They were keen astronomers, tracking the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. They used this knowledge to create a highly accurate lunisolar calendar with 12 months, essential for timing their agricultural festivals and religious rituals. This technical prowess fueled what could be called the first global economy. Mesopotamia lacked key resources like wood, stone, and metal. So, the Sumerians became master traders. Their caravans and ships traveled incredible distances. They imported precious lapis lazuli from the mountains of Afghanistan, cedar wood from the forests of Lebanon, and copper from the mines of Oman. Trade was a highly organized affair. We see evidence of merchant guilds and the use of standardized weights and measures. Before coins, they used clay tokens and eventually developed detailed clay contracts, sealed with personal cylinder seals, to record transactions, the world's first business paperwork. And how did they record all this? This is arguably their greatest gift to humanity, the invention of writing. Around 3500 BCE, temple administrators needed a way to track grain, livestock, and beer. They began using simple pictures, or pictograms, pressed into wet clay. Over centuries, these pictures became more abstract, evolving into a complex system of wedge-shaped marks known as cuneiform. The tools were simple: a reed stylus, called a calamus, and a tablet of clay. But the impact was monumental. Writing allowed for the recording of history, the administration of empires, and the birth of literature. To learn this complex skill, young boys attended schools called the Ediba, or tablet house. Life as a student scribe was tough, with long days of copying texts and harsh discipline. But the reward was a prestigious position in society. With writing, the Sumerians began to tell their stories. The most famous of these is the Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's first great work of literature. It's a powerful story about a king's quest for immortality, exploring timeless themes of friendship, loss, and what it means to be human. But that wasn't all. They wrote myths like the descent of Inanna into the underworld, and countless hymns, proverbs, and fables, creating a rich literary tradition that would influence cultures for millennia. For centuries, Sumer was a land of competing city-states, constantly at war with one another. Then, around 2334 BCE, a man of legendary origins changed everything. His name was Sargon of Akkad. He conquered the Sumerian city-states one by one and forged them into the world's first true empire. The Akkadian Empire stretched across Mesopotamia. To maintain control over this vast territory, Sargon was a political innovator. He installed loyal governors in conquered cities, created the first professional standing army, and standardized administration across his realm, creating a model that future empire builders would follow. But no empire lasts forever. The fall of Sumer was not a single event, but a long, slow decline. The constant warfare between city-states weakened them internally. The environmental crisis they had unknowingly created, the increasing salt in their soil, devastated their agricultural heartland, leading to famine and social unrest. This weakened state made them vulnerable to outsiders. Waves of invaders, like the Amorites, swept in from the west. The final blow came with the rise of a new power in Mesopotamia, Babylon. Under its famous king, Hammurabi, Babylon conquered the last of the Sumerian cities, and the Sumerian language and political identity faded into history. Though the civilization of Sumer vanished, its ideas did not. They were the pioneers. They gave us the city, the wheel, writing, law, and literature. Their knowledge was absorbed by the Akkadians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, and the Persians. It was passed on to the Greeks and the Romans, and through them, to the entire world. Every time you check the time, write a sentence, or live in a city governed by laws, you are living in the shadow of the Sumerians. Their world may be buried under the sands of Iraq, but their legacy is all around us. It is the foundation on which our own world is built. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey back in time, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from our ancient past.